Welcome to this advanced video diving into the automated test execution via the Tracetronic tool test guide. It explains how to solve the challenge of bringing together different test artifacts which are required for the test execution on a test resource. So it provides an in-depth insight into test sources and test dependencies of playbooks and execution tasks. To understand this video, you should have basic knowledge about the automated test execution with test guide. For this, just have a look into our two introduction videos. As you already know, playbooks and execution tasks contain the information what to execute and where to execute it. The test source holds information on what you want to execute. And the test resource holds the information where this can be executed. This video only concentrates on how to specify the first of those parts. A test source can be any kind of file structure which contains the necessary files for a test execution. In most cases, the test source refers to an ECU-TEST workspace which is downloaded to the test resource. In this workspace, ECU-TEST is started as well as playbook command steps are executed. In addition to the test case implementations, often other files are required for the test execution, such as the system under test, specific data description files, or parameter definition files. Sometimes these files are stored in totally different locations than the test source. For this use case, you can additionally specify test dependencies. These are also downloaded to the test resource and are therefore available during the execution. The download folder for test sources and dependencies is named bundle cache. Its default location is in the resource adapter workspace that usually is located in the user's home directory. The location of the bundle cache can be changed via the resource adapter configuration file. There you can also configure to automatically clean up the bundle cache periodically. Have a look into the resource adapter example config for more information. The test source of a playbook can be one of 4 different source types. Location means that the test source is located on a local or network drive which is reachable from the test resource. In this case, the source does not need to be downloaded to the resource as it can be used directly on the drive. To define a location source, you have to provide its absolute file path. Artifact means that the test source is stored as a zip file in the test guide artifact management. In this case, the source, for example a zipped ECU-TEST workspace, is actually located in an external file storage and is only referenced via test guide. The source is downloaded to the resource indirectly via the test guide REST API and is unzipped afterwards. To define an artifact source, you have to provide the test guide artifact ID. Artifact filter means that the test source is the most current artifact in the test guide artifact management, which matches a given stored artifact filter. The artifact filter is evaluated when the playbook is executed. That is, directly when the execution tasks are generated and queued. The generated execution tasks only reference the computed artifact ID. Test guide artifact filters can be defined on the artifact filter page. To define an artifact filter source, you have to provide the ID of the artifact filter. SCM means that a test source is stored in a source control management repository. In this case, the test source is downloaded to the test resource via a Git or Subversion client. For playbook SCM sources, you can also specify a sparse checkout path, which means that only the given subfolder will be checked out and not the whole repository. To define an SCM source, you have to provide the SCM label of a predefined SCM repository in test.guide. Additionally, an SCM commit reference, for example a branch name, a tag name, or a commit hash, can optionally be specified. SCM repositories and the associated credentials to be used have to be configured in test.guide under Project Settings SCM Tools. As they are checked out directly on the test resource, they need to be accessible from there. If your actual ECU-TEST workspace is just a subfolder of the defined test source, you can additionally specify a relative workspace path. In this case, the ECU-TEST processable and all playbook command steps will be executed in this subfolder of the downloaded test source. A playbook can have any number of additional test dependencies besides the main test source. For each of these dependencies, you also have to define a source which can be one of 4 different types. Artifact means that a test dependency is stored in the test.guide artifact management, just like the artifact test source. Artifact filter means that a test dependency is the most current artifact in the test.guide artifact management, which matches a given stored artifact filter. Also just like the artifact filter test source. If the SCM type is specified, the test dependency is stored in a Git or Subversion repository. This is also the same like in the SCM test source. But for SCM dependencies, you can additionally specify a checkout location. This checkout location defines that the given SCM repository is directly checked out into the given absolute or relative file path instead of the bundle cache. This makes it possible, for example, to merge your test dependencies directly into the test source. If a relative file path is given, the checkout location is interpreted relative to the path of the workspace source. The type link defines a test dependency that is provided as a download link. The file that the link references is then downloaded directly to the test resource. To define a link dependency, you have to provide the link URL, which has to be accessible from the test resource. For security reasons, you can additionally provide the MD5 hash of the file to be downloaded. After you define the source of the test dependency, you can also describe what you want to do with the dependency after the checkout. For artifact and link dependencies, you can configure the unzip setting, which means that the dependency should be unzipped on the test resource file system. You can also define a file path where the dependency should be copied to after the checkout with the copy to setting. This can be used, for example, if you want to have the downloaded dependency additionally at a specific position in your workspace source, so that it is usable in ECU-TEST. Finally, you have to define a label for each dependency. These labels can be referenced in paths, constant values and package parameter values of playbook ECU-TEST steps and in arguments of playbook command steps. For this, you can use the $bracket notation. Before the execution on the test resource, all these references are replaced by the absolute file paths of the downloaded dependencies. When executing a playbook, the test source and dependencies are copied to the generated test execution tasks. The definition of test source and dependencies is almost exactly the same in playbooks and execution tasks, but there are some small differences. For example, sources and dependencies of type artifact filter are evaluated directly when creating an execution task, so that only the concrete artifact IDs are referenced at the execution task. For more information about the exact definition of test sources and test dependencies, see the test guide REST API schema. Today you learned something about test sources and dependencies of playbooks and test execution tasks in test guide. You now know how to flexibly build your execution environment by combining your test case implementations from an ECU-TEST workspace with other necessary files from other locations on one test resource. You may also have a look into our other advanced videos about the automated test execution with test guide. Thank you for listening and I hope you enjoyed the video.